So, what would you little maniacs like to do first?
That's weird. I guess gotta choose this one. There we go. Good evening. Sorry I'm taking so long to figure out everything. I don't know what's wrong with me. I used to know how to work this, and today suddenly I don't know how to work this. But good evening to everyone who has come through. Let's get right into it since I'm a couple minutes behind. Today we're going to talk about From and the first two episodes of From, and we're going to talk about also Atlanta, which I feel like more people should be talking about this season of Atlanta. Hey, sexy monkey, let's take the banner down and put up some comments. Sexy Monkey says, hi, I've never seen this series, but I've heard nothing but great things about it. Tony Man says, great. And Tony T says, hi, everyone. I'm so glad you guys are here. So let me see if I can switch this. Okay, that didn't switch. Okay, hang on just a second. Bear with me. There we go. That's what I wanted up on the screen. Let's make that a little bigger. Matter of fact, let's make me smaller and make that bigger. Yeah, I like that better. So we're going to start talking about what the heck is happening? This is the worst live stream ever. Anyways, Tony Man says, looking forward to Atlanta review. So much to take in. Yes, there was a lot to take in. But I'm going to start with From. I took so many notes on this because I'm noticing so much more watching it a second time. This series is on Epix, but it's also available on Amazon Prime, I believe. Oh, got another comment here. Sexy Monkey says, a friend of mine's been recently telling me about what's been happening in recent episodes. Yes, Atlanta, it's not at all like if you saw the first season of Atlanta, this season is nothing. Well, I can't say nothing because there were inklings of it. In the first season of Atlanta, there were some surreal elements, but season 3 goes completely full on surreal. And that's why I keep comparing it to Twin Peaks. But I'll come back to that. So I said about From, it really sets the tone at the very beginning. It starts out with Harold Perrineau walking down the street ringing this bell, and he plays a sheriff named Boyd in this small town. He's ringing the bell to tell everybody about the curfew, by the way. And there's a song playing in the diner, and it's like the perfect song to start the series. The song is called "We've Got to Get Out of This Place." I'm not sure of the singers. Let me see. Alexa, who sings "We've Got to Get Out of This Place"?
We've Got to Get Out of This Place is by the Animals.
I'm waiting for her to stop listening. Okay, it's by, see, if my mother was here, she'd be able to tell me that it was by the Animals, but it was the perfect song to start the series off because the series is about a group of people who are trapped in a town. And another thing I should warn about people who have not started watching this series, it takes no time to get to the carnage. Like I clocked it at about 7.5 minutes in is when you get the first kill, even before the theme song plays. The theme song plays at about 8 minutes in, and the theme song is Que Sera, which means whatever will be. Or actually, the direct translation is what will be, but you know what I mean. We get introduced to these different characters, and one of them is the town drunk named Frank, who he was supposed to nail the window shut because he has a child, which is what Boyd told everyone. If you have a child, nail your window shut. And he stayed out all night, got drunk. He didn't nail the window shut. and he didn't properly place up the talisman that he's holding in his hand as well. And so a creature got into his daughter's window. And that scene was pretty cool too, because it actually reminds you of Salem's Lot. Because if you've ever seen Salem's Lot, there's a scene where there's like a vampire that's like scratching at the window, and then he's, beckoning the child inside to let him in. This had a similar start to it, where the creature, it has not been determined yet whether they're vampires or not, because they don't just suck blood. But same thing happens. A creature is beckoning outside the window, but it's pretending to be the little girl's grandmother. And when she walks over to the window and lets that creature in, it changes very quickly from an old lady to this. And this is the clearest I could get of a capture of it, because it happens really, really quickly. Hopefully later in the series, you'll get a better look at the creatures, but they definitely can transform from looking like a regular human or human-like individual to whatever this is that came through the window. And the carnage after that, like when they showed, I was surprised they showed this on a television show, because it's very much movie quality, but they showed the aftermath, and like they literally had to have made a practical effects dummy of its little girl with her chest cavity ripped open and entrails sticking out of it. Like it's really, really gory, and it looks to be done completely practical effects, except for, the transformation scene. Like when this character transformed from looking like the grandmother to this creature, that was probably CGI transformation, but it happened so quickly. I can't judge whether it was good or bad, because like in a blink of the eye, you almost missed it. Speaking of that character who I just talked about, Frank, when Boyd shows up, this is one of the best scenes of the first episode, is when Boyd smacks the absolute dog crap out of Frank for not nailing that window shut. Like that looks real. They really sold that smack. That looked like a real smack to me. Felt like a real smack to me. We do learn in the first episode that whatever has killed this little girl only comes at night, which lends more to the vampire theory. I thought this really introduces the main characters pretty effectively. Some of the other ones that were introduced to, of course, I wanted to go over. I'm glad I put this picture here because it's jogging my memory. I want to talk about how awesome Harold Perrineau is as an actor. This is him when he played Mercutio in Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. Amazing performance, very, very underrated. We saw him for years on Oz. I did not watch Oz because it was a little too extreme for me. It was like giving me anxiety trying to watch that show. So, but I have seen a few episodes, and every time I've seen him, he's been great. And then also, he played this character most recently on Claws, which he really nailed the affect of a person that's on the spectrum. And I used to actually work with children on the spectrum, and I have an uncle that's on the spectrum, and his portrayal, it was dignified and it was very accurate, in my opinion. But we also meet his deputy, he goes by the name Kenny. But we later find out in an episode from his father that his name is Fulan. His Chinese name is Fulan, but since he was raised in America, he wanted to have a more American sounding name, so he goes by Kenny. And the funny thing is, when I first saw him, because of his haircut, not because of his facial features, but because of his haircut, he reminded me of Tetsuo. Because look at that haircut really close. And look at this. I kept on looking at him going, why does he look like Tetsuo to me? Because of that haircut. Because but within the scope of the show, it makes sense why he would have kind of a bad, like everyone on the show has a bad haircut because they're stuck in this town and there probably isn't a barber there. But that explains that. We're also introduced to this couple and their children that are traveling. Obviously, they're on vacation. They're in Winnebago. I think the father's name is Jim. The mother's name is Tabitha. They have a teenage daughter named Julie and a younger son named Ethan. And so they end up in the town because they're traveling, and then they suddenly happen upon this tree that, obviously blocks their way. So they have to take a detour, and they end up stuck in that town. And no matter what direction they try to drive in, they keep circling back around to this town. So it kind of has a science fiction-y feel because you don't know whether the town is in another dimension, whether they're in a vortex, whether it's like something magical. You don't know what's happening, why this town is like this, but they're stuck there. I was about to mention how their daughter, you could see her right here standing in front of the Winnebago. Her whole character reminds me of the teenage daughter from Poltergeist. Like the way she acts, the way she teases her little brother is giving this character all over again. I feel like I'm skipping a part. Let me check my notes. We talked about the town dimension. Donna. This is a picture of the daughter once they make it to Colony House, but I want to introduce Donna first. This is Donna, who runs Colony House, which is like this big ass house on a hill that a group of people are staying at within the town. And at one point during this first episode, Boyd, the father, Jim, and Ethan have to stay behind in the camper because Ethan's leg is impaled on this, like, I think it was initially the leg of the table inside of the camper. So he gets his leg impaled on there. So they have to stay behind to try to free him and stitch up his leg. Meanwhile, the daughter and the mother return back to town with Kenny and Boyd's son. And there's like some tension between Kenny and Boyd's son. And there's tension between Boyd and his son as well. But they don't get into where that's coming from in the very first episode. So in this scene, they have to rush back to Colony House before nightfall because obviously those creatures are going to come out at night. And so we end up meeting, what was her name again? Donna. And then next to her is Fatima, who's also in the Colony House. And this is Boyd's actual son. What is his son's name? Did I write it down? Ellis. I'm glad I took notes because my memory is trash. That's his actual son, Ellis. However, he has a little bit more of a father-son relationship with his deputy, Kenny. And that's Ellis's. Ellis has an interesting relationship with Fatima. From Ellis's point of view, she's his girlfriend, but I don't think that she considers him her boyfriend from her point of view. Another character we meet is Sarah, who deadass reminds me of the mother from Sleepwalkers. I don't know if it's the long hair in the middle part and the very slender frame, but every time I kept seeing her, this is who I kept thinking of. And I don't know why. But yeah, she's an interesting character. I won't fully tell you what she does because it's more shocking if you don't know what's going to happen. But she definitely is an interesting character. And then finally, we are introduced to, that's the EMT, obviously, Christy, who had to spend the night in the camper with the father, the son, and Sheriff Boyd. But the last characters we meet are, I think his friend was named Toby, but his name was Jade. Very interesting name. His name is Jade, and he was in a car with a guy named Toby, and they were flying high off of something. They're the part of the reason why they end up in town is they almost collide and have a car crash with the Winnebago, which is why the Winnebago ended up flipping over and the little boy got impaled and all that kind of stuff. But Jade's character, how do you describe him? He's kind of a jerk. But they write him in a complex way so that he doesn't only have negative attributes. He also has positive attributes. As human beings are, most people aren't completely evil or completely good. They have different attributes. It feels like I'm flying through this, but they introduced so many characters in the first episode, but they did it so well. Ordinarily, this wouldn't work out. You would say, oh, they didn't do a good job of introducing people, but they actually did just by having them interact with each other. There weren't a whole lot of long expositional scenes, and when there were, they made sense. Like, for example, there was an expositional scene with Kenny's father, who has dementia, and he is living in the clinic, and he's playing chess with a nurse. And they're just having a natural conversation that ends up being expositional because we get a lot of information about Kenny's backstory. from his father, but it makes sense because they're playing a game of chess and people do talk to each other when they're playing chess. I liked that the way they wrote this made sense. Let me check some comments. Let's see what you guys are saying. I have to come back up here. And Sex Moon says, he's my favorite series of all time. He's in my favorite series of all time, Oz. Oh, wait, is this a different Atlanta to the one from Donald Glover? It seems like it from what you're telling me. No, it actually is the same Atlanta from Donald Glover. He's still executive producing it. But the way that it's set up this season is they're alternating episodes. There's like the first episode is more like an anthology. Then the second episode follows Paperboy and Earn and Val and everybody like the previous seasons. Then the third episode is also anthology, and it kind of ping pongs back and forth. But it's still, even the episodes with Paperboy and Earn are still very surreal. Think of that episode. Think of perfect example. Last season, there was an episode where you had the person that was being interviewed and they said that they were transracial because they felt like a 46-year-old white guy. Imagine a whole episode following that character. That's the type of vibe you get. But also, there's some creepiness to it, like the Teddy Perkins episode. So just imagine if you made 10 episodes, but 5 of them were like Teddy Perkins. That's a way I would describe it. Tony Man says, I forget how many episodes of From. I left off after the trailer town drunk episode. That's only the first episode. Oh, are you talking about what happened to him when he had to get punished for? I think I'm misreading that. My apologies. I think you're talking about the episode when he was punished for having not nailed the window shut. I'm not sure which episode that is, but I think it's somewhere in the middle. But there's 10 episodes completely. Sexy Monkey says, I thought that Atlanta centered around the hip hop behind the scenes. This sounds completely different. No, it's actually not centered around that. It's, how do I describe it? It does follow them. Like, for example, in season 3, they are on tour in Europe, but it's not really centered around the hip hop at all. Like, you don't even see Paperboy perform any songs. It's more centered around their lives outside of hip hop. I mean, there are a few scenes where Ern is talking to like the stage manager or promoter, but a lot of it is like a day in the life type of thing. Like, for example, when I'll get into it when I talk about episode 2, which I'm going to do today. There's a lot of episode 2 is Darius and Van running around Amsterdam, and it's really, really cool. Lordrin says, hello, Nurse Shasha and crazy chat people. Lordrin says, Tony Man, what's up, son? Lordrin says, he didn't get punished, he got murked. Well, I was trying not to spoil it. But yeah, he got murked. And then Tony Man says, what up, Lordrin? I'm glad to see y'all talking to each other. That makes me feel good, because that means we're forming a community here. Let me get into episode 2. I don't have a whole bunch of visuals for episode 2 because it took me long enough to get these together. But at the end of episode 1, they race to get, into the colony house before nightfall, which they kind of fail to do. So they do get confronted by some of the creatures, but Kenny shoots one in the chest and they are able to get into the house. One last character I almost forgot to mention was the priest. And let me see. I know I wrote down his name. I think it starts with a K. I'm not seeing where I wrote it in my notes, but I know that the priest's name starts with a K, but he has a good conversation with Kenny as well. That gives us even more backstory on Kenny and how he ended up in that town, which I'll just tell that story really briefly. He was sitting at the table with the priest in Colony House, and he's talking about, having to deal with his father having dementia, which is very, very difficult, especially with a character as young as Kenny looks to be. Kenny looks like he's in his mid-20s. So that would be very difficult to deal with your parent going through dementia that young. And he talks about how he and his mother didn't lock the doors at night. And so his father got on a train and ended up in the city. So he and his mother went and found his father. And on the way back, as they were driving, they ran into the same tree that stopped the family in Winnebago, and they ended up in this town. So he's kind of kicking himself, or probably blaming himself, thinking that had he locked the door at night, his father wouldn't have gotten out into the city and they wouldn't have ended up in this weird town. But it's a really good scene. I should look up that actor's name, because he did all the actors in the series did an excellent job. There's no weak actors, I can say, so far. And then this character, what was his name? I can't recall this character's name, but he also lives in Colony House. But he acts as though he might be on the spectrum, but I'm not sure whether we're meant to think of him that way, or is he acting this way due to the trauma that he's gone through from being in this town. So the jury's still out on what we're supposed to perceive him as. Okay, so I'll put that up. Let's see. We have some more comments here. Tony Man says, remember to watch episode 10 of Atlanta. There's an after credit scene that possibly ties up the loose ends. Oh, I didn't know that. I am going to go through the whole series, but today I'm only going to talk about the first 2 episodes of Atlanta. Lordran says, I wonder why don't they try silver bullets? And try everything. Well, because they're stuck in this town, they only have access to what's there. So they may not, it's a small town. When I think about it, Kenny had a gun. So they would have to probably make their own silver bullets. Possibly. I'm sorry, but I can't stay. I got food poison. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. That really sucks. That happened to me before. It feels horrible. I'm sorry to hear that. I hope you're able to get over it with ease. That's really, really bad that happened, because I believe me, I've been in an emergency room for that. That really, really sucks. Tony Man says, feel better and stay sexy. Lordra says, Sex Monkey, sorry to hear that. Get well soon. Tony Man says, Sexy Monkey says too, Tony Man, thank you. Very, very cool. I'm going to talk briefly about episode 2 of From, and then I'll get into Atlanta. So episode 2 starts out right where episode 1 kind of left off, with the people in the camper, and they finally get Ethan free. They get his leg patched up, but there's a really good dream sequence that is had by Christy, the EMT. And because the series started with the death of a child, I didn't even think that it was a dream sequence until it was revealed that it was, because if they would go as far as to kill a child within the first 7 minutes, everything feels like anything can happen, if that makes sense. Okay. Now that, oh, hey, Board Now. Glad to see you in the house. Board Now says, feel better soon. Sexy Monkey Godfather. And says, both these shows intrigue me. Yes, that's kind of why I paired them together. I couldn't think of anything else to pair them with, and I wanted to do 2 shows at a time, because I was worried I wouldn't be able to fill the time on a live stream, because I'm not so used to live streaming yet. Okay, so at this point, everybody's at Colony House. But how do you describe to a group of new people that you live in a town filled with monsters? That was a very difficult thing for them to do. So Donna has like this method where she basically ties them up so that they don't try to open any doors or windows overnight while the creatures are outside. But she does explain to them what's happening. And while Julie, the teenage daughter, pretty much kind of accepts it because of what she saw outside, like she saw what may have been a classmate or ex-friend outside. The creature was making themselves look like that anyways. But her mother, Tabitha, really is not buying any of this. She's not listening to Donna at all until Donna tells her the story of how she ended up there. And how she ended up there was that her and her sister were on a hunting trip. And she said that they were driving and they saw the tree, just like how everyone else saw that down tree. And the creatures were approaching. And she said she saw one of the creatures pretty much bite her sister's face off. And she's been in the town ever since. And she's, as I showed the picture of her, she's a very robust, strong woman, tough lady. She was a survivor. Victor is the name of that last character that had the button-up shirt on. I found a note finally. Fatima tries to help teenage Julie acclimate to Colony House by taking her all the way upstairs to like the attic and having her look out the window and try to talk to her about the beauty in the world despite the horrors. And she's looking at, the moon and the stars and things that are beautiful. So that was a really nice moment between Fatima and Julie. Now, this part is a little bit sad because it involves Kenny's father. Let me take a moment to check out some more comments. Board now says, it's a good pairing. Don't see Michael from Lost in enough. Very, very true. Lorden says, if I see a black man shaking a bell before night, I'm immediately getting my black ass inside. Yes, yes. You don't have to tell us twice. Okay, let me see what else happened. Kenny's father is, as I said previously, he was in the clinic playing chess with the nurse, and the nurse is getting him ready for bed because the clinic is also doubling as a nursing home for him. But what's her name? Sarah, the thin girl, is there. She does something that leaves everyone open to attack. And unfortunately, Kenny's father is a victim, and I believe the nurse as well, but we didn't see the aftermath of the nurse. But we saw that Kenny's father the creatures had got to Kenny's father, which is really, really messed up. Something else happens, but I don't want to, spoil the whole thing. So if anybody's listening to this, they could still have fun watching it, not knowing every single beat that happens, because there are some other cool things that happen. I don't want to spoil the surprise. And what's crazy is I forgot to mention that when Kenny was having that talk with Father Kotry, that was his name, about dealing with his father's dementia, he mentions that he can't bear to see another dead body. And it's almost gut-wrenching that just after he says he can't bear seeing another dead body, that the very next dead body he sees is his own father. Like, that's really, really a tough thing to deal with. Now, the crazy deal about Sarah is that they do show her responding to the creatures. And then later she has a conversation with her brother saying that she couldn't help it, that she just had to do what they told her to do in order for them to escape. But they leave it very vague. It's just that one quick little scene with her telling her brother this, and then we're back to the other group of people. So obviously, eventually that'll come out what it is she's hearing that other people may not be hearing. And then with that, I'll just give a little bit of a mini review of the series so far. Even though I myself have finished the series, I'm rewatching it just so that I can review it with you, because I just wanted to talk about it with more people. But I wrote in my notes, this show gave me what I was wanting for Midnight Mass. I don't know if you guys remember Midnight Mass on Netflix. This is the show I wanted Midnight Mass to be. But every time I tried to watch Midnight Mass, I think I made it to episode 4. I kept falling asleep on that sucker. Like, hopefully it gets good. Somebody let me know if it eventually ever gets good. But it was just so slow and boring, and it took forever to develop characters. Like, I don't need to see two characters talking for 16 minutes walking down a straight road. Like, that's just too much. This, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's my ADHD. My bad. I should preface that because I don't have a normal mind. I have an abnormal mind. So maybe to a normal person that's not boring, but to me it was boring. And this series introduced so many characters, and it did it in a better way, and it makes you care about them. Another note I wrote is I like the first scare scene, which was reminiscent of Salem's Lot, which I talked about. And then I wrote, this series feels like as much of a love letter to Stephen King as Stranger Things does. And I still feel that way. Okay. Hey, Bob Gunter, welcome to the stream. Bob says, Midnight Mass is too sad for me. Board now says, yeah, tapped out of Midnight Mass after 5 or 6 episodes. It was boring for me too. Hey, Bob. Hey, Board. Very cool for you guys saying hello to each other. I like that. Let me go on to my notes for Atlanta because there's so much to talk about in Atlanta. Okay, the very first episode is called 3 Slaps. And it starts out very interestingly. Let me make this a little bit larger. It starts out with one more comment before I get started. I felt sleepy every time I tried to watch Midnight Mass. Yeah, so it wasn't just me. That sucker was putting me to sleep. I'm sorry. But the very first episode of Atlanta starts out with 2 gentlemen on a boat, and it appears to be that they're fishing either late at night or early in the morning, because sometimes people go fishing at 4 in the morning and it's still pretty dark. And one of the men says that he almost drowned in this lake as a child, and that he felt like there were hands pulling him under. And the other gentleman tells him, well, this is Lake Lanier. This is a haunted lake. And what's funny is that he just says that, but he doesn't really elaborate too much. Like, he does say that there's a town underneath the lake, but he doesn't elaborate on what town it was that's under the lake. Okay, Tony T says Midnight Mass does drag. Board now says, I'm not sure if From is showing anywhere in the UK. Next we'll have to fish for it. Oh, that's unfortunate. Think you have to be super interested in religion to get into Midnight Mass. That could be it. Let me take a sip before I get started with this. And love that first scene for the subtle darkening. Yes, it does. It does visually become darker. Like, it starts out, like a regular nighttime scene, but it does visually get gradually and gradually more dark. Now, if you... Bob says, both the story in the town and the story of the episode is based on true events. Yes, I'm just about to get into that. At the beginning of this episode, when they're talking about the town that's under the water, and this is in a place called Lake Lanier, which is in Georgia, in the southern part of the United States. There was a town. Let me show you what it looks like now. This is what Lake Lanier looks like now. It's kind of a resort that they tried to build. And these are, you could see how pretty the water looks, and it's very inviting looking. However, where's the picture? Well, now I have to cycle through till I find the one. There it is. This is what's underneath Lake Lanier. It's a real poltergeist scenario where, in Poltergeist, they moved the headstones but didn't move the bodies. But in Lake Lanier, they didn't even move the headstones. So the whole town is underwater. And what adds insult to injury is that the town that was there was named Oscarville, and it was an independent Black township. So most of the people of Oscarville were run out through means of lynching, etc. But they say that the town was empty when they flooded it, but I don't believe that the town was empty when they flooded it at all. And oftentimes when you dive into Lake Lanier, I think half the time people are probably diving and hanging their head on a tombstone and perishing. But people often say that they have been or felt like they were being pulled under. And actually, you know what? Give me a moment. There is a video. Let me see if I still have it saved. I saved a video of this girl that it really did look like she was getting pulled under from Lake Lanier. Let me see if I can pull it up. Oh, while I'm looking this up, I should tell you that over 500 people have died on Lake Lanier, which is an extreme amount of people. Okay, let me check one more folder. If it's not in this folder, then I did not save it. But there was a video that I had saved of this girl looking like she got pulled directly into the water. Or at least I thought I did. Yeah, it's not there. But you guys tell me if you've seen this video. It looks like this girl, she was twerking on the side of a boat, and it just looked like something that you can't see just grabbed her and pulled her underneath the water. Lorna said, I just fried chicken in the microwave and now I'm sick. Yeah, if you put it in the microwave, that is not fried chicken, but I know where you're going with this. I will get to that. Lordran gets his chicken cooking ideas from Paula Patton. Don't do that. Bob Gunter says, that is a lot of hope you talk about the rest of the season, the white clothes one and the reparations one. Oh yeah, I'm going to talk about the whole season. Just not today because there isn't enough time, but I'm going to get into that. So let's see. From this story. Oh, I didn't tell you how it ends, did I? The man in the boat. Let me go back to it. All of a sudden, all these hands come up and literally grab him and pull him into the water. And then it jumps to a story about this little boy who's in class. It actually turns out like it's a dream sequence of this character here. Let me get my notes back. This character, his name is... It started with an L, like Loquavius, I think his name was. Oh, there was something else that the man in the boat spoke about. Let me get into that right quick. The man in the boat also mentioned the illusion of whiteness. He said that term. And he said they had a very interesting conversation about becoming white, which is a thing in America. And one of the comments he made is, quote, Armenians are white as hell until they aren't. And this is very true of U.S. history. Like, there was a time period when Italians weren't considered white. Now they are. There was a time period when Irish people weren't considered white. Now they are. There's actually a book called How the Irish Became White. It's very, very fascinating. And then he talks about how, let me go to this picture that I also had on here. Yeah, y'all are seeing what I'm about to talk about. This right here. He talked about how the racial classification is used to manipulate people, so to speak, so that certain groups of people don't know that they're still enslaved, even though they're enslaved, just by giving them the title of white. And that made me think of this documentary that I saw called The Wild and Wonderful Whites of West Virginia. And it was really, really eye-opening because it talked about the descendants of the people that worked in the coal mines in West Virginia. And what I didn't know is that I might get the time period wrong. It might be the 1910s or 1920s, but the people that were working in the coal mines, they weren't paid with money. They were paid with vouchers that they could only use at a company store. And I'm like, that's the closest you could probably get to making someone a slave without them knowing that they're a slave. Because if you don't pay them with money, they can't even move away because they have no money. That was so wild, taking a look at how those people were treated. And a lot of them died of black lung, and they were treated horribly. Like they were just given these little trailers to live in, and they go work in the mines and get sick from the black lung, and then they can't move anywhere because they're not being paid with money. They're just getting paid with vouchers that they can take to their company store to get food and clothes. And it was just, I'm like, this is modern slavery in a way, and that's really messed up. But yeah, if you ever get a chance, check out that documentary. I saw it on Tubi recently, and it's called The Wild and Wonderful Whites of West Virginia. But let me go back to the story about the little boy, which is the main story in this episode of it's either Loquavius or Loquarius. Anyways, he was in school, and the teacher tells the class that they're going to go see Black Panther 2, and he starts dancing on the desk like this. Well, in his chair like this. So then he gets in trouble with the teacher for doing this. And his mother comes to the school, and yes, she was harsh with him. But it was what happens next that probably makes him end up in this predicament. His grandfather's also there, and he just paintbrushes his face, just like pop, 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 and just says, "What's wrong with you?" And that's part of the reason why this episode is called Three Slaps, because it starts with three slaps, but also, I mean, that's the literal part of the three slaps, but I think there's also a figurative three slaps in this episode. So because the school see his grandfather smack him in the face, he gets put into, what do they call it? There's a certain type of custody they call it, but I'll just call it foster care. So he gets put in foster care, and this is when they're, taking him to his new foster home, which is, let me check my notes of what I wrote about these women. I wrote that they were the stereotype of every gentrifier, Portlandia, think they're helping people but are actually very harmful type of person. That's who he gets put into the custody of. Let me take a pause to read some comments. Don't Hate, directed at Tony Mann. Working Towards Whiteness is the book. Also, the guy in the boat shows up in the season again a few times. He seems like a mystical white guy. Yeah, he does. He shows up in the reparations episode in the hotel. I can't remember the other times, but he definitely is almost like a Gene Roddenberry type character, or like the Hitchhiker, if you remember the series The Hitchhiker. Tony says, Loquarius and I was bothered by the mom in the beginning. The name is Loquarius. And I was bothered by the mom in the beginning. Yes, because on the surface, what she was saying was true, but the way that she said it was it was abusive. But sometimes parents are so scared of the world hurting their children that they're reflexively talking tougher to them to toughen them up. That doesn't always work. But I understand where it comes from. Ended up understanding her at the end. Exactly. Lordran says, crazy as hell lesbians. That's right. Well, I'm not going to attribute any of their craziness to whatever sexual orientation they are, because I just don't do stuff like that. But yeah, they was crazy as hell. They were, yeah. Let me get into how crazy they are. Let's talk about this right here. I wanted to smack the hell out of her. she had these kids working out in the garden, and she says, why don't you try singing a song while you work? I wanted to. The audacity. And she said it unironically. Anyways, if that wasn't bad enough, they didn't have any washcloths for the children, and there was the microaggression of making the child this towel that says Larry on it because she couldn't be bothered to learn his name. So annoying. That's let me see how Tony Man wrote it again. Loquarius. Yeah, that's Loquarius working in their garden as she's telling him to sing a song. And this right here, this is where I was the most traumatized of. I mean, that's sad for me to say. I just talked about a flooded out ghost town, people being lynched. I talked about so much horrible things happen in the world, but I was traumatized by this uncooked chicken. That's wrong. I need to reevaluate some things in my life, but I can't help it. Like, what the hell? Yeah. And she put, what is that? Avocado, and I don't even know what's on top of the avocado. Peas? Like, it's the whole thing is just so and then it looks like she tried to drip like some sauce or something. I don't know. It's disgusting. Let it out. Yes. Like, I think everybody Tony Man says great self-restraint. Thank you. Because I'm YouTube has standards and stuff, and I can't be on here like straight up cursing and carrying on. But I can express myself on how this made me feel. Just see, how would you ever even think that was a meal? That was, this is child abuse. Actually, I wrote, no, I didn't even write it was child abuse. I wrote the lack of washcloths is child abuse, but the way they serve that chicken is criminal. Yes, they need to. I mean, in light of what happened at the end of the episode, they got their comeuppance in a way, but yeah, they should be criminally prosecuted for this. Let's talk about the farmer's market, because that's a whole nother story. This is at the farmer's market, and what I'm going to do, let me do one more comment. That chicken isn't cooked either. Yes, not at all. What I'm going to do for anybody that may be watching this on the replay, because the next part of this, especially in light of yesterday's events, might be triggering for some people. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this banner up. So you could either mute or you can fast forward until you see this banner go down if you don't want to hear even more negative stories. This scene, Laquarius tries to run and get a police officer to help him while they have him working at this farmer's market. Now, how he's dressed is very, very deliberate. And also him going to the police officer is very, very deliberate. It's reminiscent of this young man right here. And his name is Devontae Hart. Now, I think a lot of people saw this video and picture. It went very viral. I think this was possibly during one of the George Floyd protests, but it might have been for one of the other protests. I'm not 100% sure on which one it was, but he was standing out there. And what's interesting is in the show, they have Laquarius holding a free hugs sign, which is what Devontae was also holding. And you can see the pain in his eyes. You literally can see the pain in his eyes. Now, the story behind what happened to Devontae and his adopted siblings is very similar to what happened at the end of this episode, but this episode wasn't as dark as the real story. In the real story, actually, I'm going to read a little excerpt from a newspaper. It says, and this is about Atlanta, but it's also talking about the real story. says instead it focuses on the brilliantly talented Chris Farrar in a reimagined tragic story of Devontae Hart, who was killed in a murder-suicide orchestrated by his white adoptive mother, who drove the whole family off a 100-foot cliff in California. Allegations of years of abuse by his adoptive parents only came to light after the investigation, which left the world stunned, wondering if Devontae Hart's death could have been avoided. That's literally what happened. This couple, because of one of the other siblings, I'm not sure whether it was Devontae, went to a neighbor to try to get help. Rather than them relinquish their, what's the word I'm looking for? There's a specific word they use. Guardianship. That's the word I'm looking for. Rather than relinquish their guardianship of these children that they are abusing, they put them all in a minivan and drove off a cliff and killed all the children, killed all those babies. This was one of the little boys that was in that minivan that they drove off the cliff. That having that in this episode was really, really eye-opening. You could really see, like, he's not hugging that officer because he loves police officers. He's hugging an officer because he really wants help, but he's afraid to say that he wants help. And that's heartbreaking. Let me see, do I have anything? So I talked about that. I'm going to actually, let me stop sharing the screen because I don't think I have any more images to share. And I'm going to take down the banner because what I'm now talking about shouldn't be too triggering. Because at the end of this episode, it ends on a much, much lighter note. The end of the episode, rather than what happens in the true story, LaQuavius actually saves the siblings. And what's interesting is that this couple, before they were about to do what they did, they tried to save the dog, which tracks. It tracks with a certain segment of people who care more about dogs than people. And LaQuavius actually switches the dog with himself, and he ends up jumping out of the van and saving the other children. And what happens to the couple happens to the couple, which I already told the people that were listening through the trigger warning what happened. And they go off. They end up in Lake Lanier. I'll just say that. They end up in Lake Lanier. But the children are saved, which is good. And LaQuavius goes back to his home, to his mother, who is happy to see him, even though she needs to tone it down a little bit. But she's happy to see him, and he gets to eat spaghetti, and he sees, the other kids on the news and shows that they're safe. And then it gets kind of creepy because the way he looks back at the door, you almost feel like something else is going to happen. But then it cuts to Donald Glover's character, Ern, waking up in bed with some random lady. That's how the episode ends. I thought that was at times tough to watch because it was very suspenseful and very, if you know the true story, you kind of felt like that's how it was going to go. But the show purposely gave the story more of a happy ending, so to speak. So it released the tension. I think it would have been too dark if you had just done straight up that original true story. That would have been just too dark. So I appreciate that about that episode. Let me check out my notes to see did I forget to mention anything. I was going to say one more thing about people treating dogs better than humans. You ever notice that if you made a song about being violent towards another human being, they'll play it on the radio all day, every day. But try making a song being violent towards a dog or harmful towards a dog and see if it gets played on the radio. And then you get my point. Let me take a sip of my coffee and then take a look at some comments and get into episode 2. Tony Man says, wow, love the banner. Yeah, well, I'm trying to be more thoughtful, especially since you never know what people are going through. And when you're going through something, you don't always want to hear about certain things. And then other days you may be able to handle it. And that's okay. I want to normalize people feeling their feelings. Bob says when she was getting the kid to sing, she even told him to make it more like the work songs. Yeah, it was sick. Lorna says it was the St. Louis protest. Thank you. I knew I was, not sure what protest it was, so I didn't want to misspeak. There's a doc on Discovery Plus called Broken Hearts about this. Oh, I didn't know that. I have to watch that one day when I'm feeling up to it. The telling part is when the woman is crying, saying, "Why didn't they stop us? They knew what we were doing." Mm-hmm. Well, that's a whole nother story. We can get into the deficiencies in the foster care system in America, but that's a whole big old thing to get into. In this channel, we're trying to have some fun. I do talk about real stuff, but I'm really trying to just have fun, make the time pass by as we go through this collectively traumatic experience that we're all going through right now. Lordran says when they were in the van and he said, "These white people are going to kill us," and the kid said, "Sweet release," I almost died of laughter. Yeah, that's the other thing about Atlanta. Like, it's really a dramedy. It really is. Like, it can show you some really serious things, but it does break up the tension with comedic moments. People treat stray dogs better than stray cats. Yes, they do. Well, it depends on where you're at. Because it's my understanding that in Japan, they do treat stray cats pretty well. They actually have a cat island for the strays. So that's pretty cool. So for those that were interested in, which I am one of the people that's also interested in, the second part of Atlanta, which is more the story about Paperboy and Earn and Darius and now Val. Val is more of a main character than she used to be. The second episode was called Sinterklass is Coming to Town. And this catches up with Paperboy, Darius, Earn, and Van when they embark on a European tour, because Paperboy is on tour in Europe. And it starts out right where the episode 1 ended. Remember I said that the first episode plays like it was Earn's dream sequence, which is like a dream within a dream, because the first segment was the men on a boat, which was Aquarius's dream, and then the very end it ends up being Earn's dream. So it starts with Earn waking up and he's late for something. He's got to get to the airport. Excuse me. And so he can't find his underwear or his belt. So that's your first funny scene right there. He's trying to get through airport security and they're telling him to raise his hands. And he's like, "I can't because I lost my belt, my underwear. And if I raise my hands, my pants are going to fall down." And they're like, "I'm sorry, but you have to raise your hand." So he raises his hands and of course his pants fall down and everybody in the airport gets to see his behind. While he's doing this, he does get a text message from Van saying that she's also just arrived in Amsterdam, but he's nowhere near the airport. So he calls up Darius, who's sitting on the edge of the water wearing literal wooden clogs in Amsterdam. And he's like, "You have to go pick up Van." And so he goes to pick up Van. And there's 3 stories going on at the same time. And the 3 stories are one that's following Darius and Van as they're going through Amsterdam. The second story is following Earn trying to prepare for Paperboy's show. And then the third story is Paperboy being in the cushy jail at Amsterdam. I forgot what he was arrested for, but he was in jail. And I believe that is also a play on a real incident that happened. Was it A$AP Rocky that was arrested in Europe and shared pictures of how cool his jail cell looked in comparison to American jail cells? Let me pause so we go read a few more comments. K&M Lover says the Devontae Hart case broke my heart. I knew of him watching a video on YouTube of him hugging singer Xavier Rudd, and it tore me to pieces. Yeah, Van is her name. Vanessa. Yeah, Van is short for Vanessa. Darius is my favorite character. I like Darius a lot too. I think he's my favorite character too in those segments of Atlanta. When I was in university, I took a class called Race and Racism in History. We talked about how even white races were not considered white. Yes, that's what we were talking about earlier. And at the very beginning of episode 1, the guy that's in the boat, the white guy that's in the boat, talks about the illusion. What did he call it? I wrote down a specific phrase that he used. Yeah, he called it the illusion of whiteness. Because throughout American history, different groups of people have both not been considered white and then been considered white through different means. It's very, very interesting. Tony Man says he was arrested for 2 women fighting and one through a TV. Yeah, I do remember that scene with the 2 women fighting. And it was over one of them saying the N-word because both of them were European women, but one appeared to be a Black woman who is European in nationality. And the white European was saying the N-word, and that's what made them start fighting because the Black one smacked the white one. It was the funniest scene. Let me go back to where I was. I talked about the 3 concurring stories. So let's start with Darius and Van. Darius goes to pick up Van, and he has a car that is pretty much comped as part of the tour, out of the tour money that Paperboy gets. So Van wants to get a new coat. And Darius being Darius, where's Darius going to shop at? He's going to go to a thrift store because that's Darius. So he takes Van to the thrift store, and she picks out a coat that she really likes. But then she finds an address in the coat pocket. And Darius says, well, we have to go to that address now because it's like fate. It's like a sign. We have to go. And so they end up going to this address. And here's the odd part. When they get to the address, it's a funeral for Tupac. Now, there's 2 things interesting. One is that, I've heard, the stories or the theories that Tupac was in Cuba. Darius says in the show that Tupac was in the West Indies, but there's also a Dutch West Indies, and that's how he ended up in Amsterdam. And as Van is sitting there, a woman comes up and she introduced herself as Tupac's death doula. Now, a doula is something like a midwife who usually helps people deliver babies. So obviously a death doula helps people deliver something else. So I don't know whether I'm allowed to say that word on YouTube or not. So that's why I'm speaking the way I'm speaking. So Tupac's laying in the bed and they're having the funeral and the death doula is preparing everything. It's such an odd scene. It's very David Lynchian. It's actually I take that back. It felt more like a Stanley Kubrick scene. Very Stanley Kubrickian. Yes. It felt very Stanley Kubrick. Let me see what else happened. I talked about the doula. Let me do a couple more comments. Bob says, from that, it just shows me how abstract race is and how people can abuse it. How even if you're white, you're not a certain type of white because we're a different kind and we can move the goalpost. Yes. Ask any Italian American over the age of 65. I was told about the signs that said, help wanted, Irish need not apply, or signs on bars that said no dogs or Italians allowed. Like, it's crazy. Well, I'm speaking specifically from an American perspective. Obviously, these things are different depending on where you're at in the world. So bear that in mind. Thank you, Lordrin. Lordrin says Switzerland was A$AP Rocky. Yes, I remember the pictures, and so many people were so surprised at how nice the Swiss jails. They look like dormitories. They don't look like our barbaric jails here. And I think that's what the scenes with Paperboy were supposed to be kind of a takeoff on. Tony Man says, that scene made me laugh. It was unexpected. That funeral plot line was messed up. It felt like they were torturing him a bit. Yeah, the way that the death doula ended things, I don't know why. That seems like not a great way to go at all. But I guess it was done for shock effect, maybe. Oh, I didn't forget about that. That it's not Sinterklass. It is I know his name. Zwarte Piet. I didn't forget about that. I just didn't get there yet. Okay, so that's actually the next thing I was going to say. When Vern goes to the venue, the concert promoter asks if Paperboy will wear this outfit, but the outfit that he holds up is very obviously a Zwarte Piet outfit. If you don't know who Zwarte Piet is, actually, let me pull up a picture just in case, because people might not know. Let me make that smaller because I don't like that being that big on the damn screen. There we go. Zwarte Piet is a Dutch character. He's said to be Santa's helper. And what's crazy is they will say that, oh, his skin is brown because he travels down this chimney and he has soot on him. That's why he's brown. But here's the thing. Did the soot also make his hair turn into an afro? Because, yeah, that part. So the outfit that the concert promoter holds up looks something like what this one is wearing, what this one in the blue, black and white is wearing. Asks if Paperboy will wear that. And being in America, we have a totally different relationship with blackface. Let me stop sharing the screen because I don't want that up there that long anyways. Let me exit it here. So yeah, let me look at some comments here. Oh, you're thinking about Tupac. I think the dude was healthy and was murked. No, I think that it was his choice. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I took that as them saying that that was his choice. If it was soot, why is it exactly? It doesn't. The story doesn't make sense. I also in my notes, I do acknowledge that they may not have the same negative cultural connotation that we have in the United States with blackface. As it here, for those that are European watching, here blackface is used, historically has been used to demean and degrade black people. So when we see that, there's an automatic negative emotion that we would feel when we see that. There, I do acknowledge that the people get dressed up like that and give the kids candy. So it doesn't have the same negative connotation in their culture. But at the same time, I don't feel right about it. No matter how it's explained, I don't feel right about it. And that's just me. I'm sorry. That's just going to be a cultural thing that we're just going to have to disagree on. On the bright side, Zwarte Piet is not doing, at least from what I've seen of the videos of them, it's just them out there handing out candy. And that's not necessarily a negative action, but it's just, couldn't you hand out candy without painting yourself? Couldn't you put on the same exact outfit and do the same thing without painting yourself? I'm just saying. So anyways, at the end of the episode, Paperboy refuses to do the concert because of all the people standing outside that are dressed up like Zwarte Piet. And Ern tells the concert promoter this, and the promoter gets so angry that he runs after Ern to try to beat him up. But he actually mistakes one of the people in the blackface for being Ern and beats that guy up instead, which is kind of funny. It's funny that they wouldn't be able to tell the difference between a person in blackface and an actual black person. Well, we have that now with the Instagram girls that are blackfishing. They're good at that. Like, there's some pictures I look at them and I'm like, I really thought that was a black girl until you see the before picture of them before they decided to deep tan and do their hair a certain way and that type of thing. It's funny. Now they're Asian fishing too. It's crazy. So I do want to bring attention to the fact that both episodes, episode 1 and episode 2, were directed by Hiro Murai, who also directed the I just said his name earlier. Freddie Perkins? I think that's what I said. He directed the Freddie Perkins episode of Atlanta, amongst other episodes, but I think that one sticks out in everybody's mind. So Hiro does an excellent job directing. As for writers, the first episode was actually written by Donald Glover's brother, Stephen Glover. And the second episode was written by Janine Neighbors. So it's good to see a lot of other writers getting on. I believe Donald's brother Stephen wrote some episodes in the previous season as well. But I liked seeing that. I also wrote that so far I am really, really loving this season of Atlanta. I really adore how it's shot. Each episode feels like you are at an art house cinema and you are watching some independent, not necessarily avant-garde. I'll stick with surreal art house short film. That's what these each feel like. They feel like art house short films. Yeah, I wrote my notes. Each episode feels like a short indie movie. And I think I mentioned multiple times how Twin Peaks it feels like. If you are unfamiliar with Twin Peaks, get familiar. And also, if you are enjoying this season of Atlanta, you may also enjoy Twin Peaks if you're not familiar with it. I think you should definitely check that out. But I'm definitely feeling this season so far. I think I'm up to episode 8, but I'm going to cover it each week on here. Let me get to some of the comments. Let me see. Forgive me if I repeat myself. Bob says, if it was soot, why would his lips be red? I might have read that one, but I'm reading again just in case. Board now says, gotta go. Have a good night. Really good stuff. Thank you so much. You have a good night. Thank you for coming through. Bob says, I think the ambiguousness with the funeral is kind of the point. Is it innocent or is it sinister? Good point. Teddy Perkins. Yeah, I think I said Freddie Perkins, didn't I? I meant to say Teddy Perkins. And the crazy part was Tupac's scene had Hail Mary playing in the background. Yes, it did. It did. That was an excellent musical choice. I feel like I had written a note about the music in not Lost, in From, but I can't remember what it was. Maybe I'll remember it next time. But there was a note. I said about the first song, but there was also something about the score. Or was it on here that I wrote? There was a note that I had about the score. Yeah, I don't remember what it was. But there was something I wrote about the score in Atlanta that reminded me of something else as well. But it was very, very good. I think with that, I should wrap up soon because I got to watch some TV tonight because tomorrow we will be talking about Hellbound and Ju-on Origins, which I think more people should have talked about. Some of you may not be digging it, but I'm digging it. Thing about Hellbound is it does come as both with subtitles and dubbed. So if you have difficulty with subtitles, you want to listen to the dub version, there is a dub version available on Netflix. Ju-on Origins, I do not remember whether it was dubbed or not. I have to check it out because it is a Japanese series, and a lot of times the Japanese series don't dub their content, whereas the Korean series do dub a lot of their content. Oh, wait, let me come back up. Tony Man says, you're going to enjoy episodes 9 and 10. Yeah, I let off. The last episode I saw was the scholarship episode, which was an amazing episode. I can't wait to talk about that one and to rewatch it. Ju-on Origins is on Netflix. And it only has 6 episodes. Both of these, Hellbound and Ju-on Origins, only have 6 episodes. So those are going to probably fly by. And also, I don't think Ju-on Origins, it may not be an hour-long show. It may only be 30 minutes. And Hellbound alternates. Some episodes are an hour long, some are 30 minutes, some are 40 minutes. They just made the episodes however length they needed to be. Bob says, nice, I'll be here for Ju-on. I love that show. Bob says, I wrote a paper once on the cult mentioned in the Ju-on show. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know about that cult. Let me write that down because I will have to look that up so I have more context. AUM cult Ju-on show. Thank you. I'm always impressed with the people that come through on this channel. Like y'all are, I'm so thankful that this audience is so smart and educated and real well read. And when I say educated, I don't just mean classically educated. You are the type of people that educate yourselves. You read, you Google things, you interact with life. You have a curiosity. These are great things. These are great attributes to have. Awesome. I'll watch 1 and 2 tonight. Yeah, a lot of background stories in the stories were based on real things. The girl in concrete as well. Ah. Let me put the girl in concrete. Okay, thank you again. All right, let me get out of here so I can prepare for tomorrow. And I also got to get some stuff done on my other channel because I'm a little behind in reviewing 90 Day Fiance. I do that on Fashion Freak TV. And also I'm on Hood Podcast on Mondays. We talk about news and weird from around the world, and it's a lot of fun. Lordran says, I'll be there. Thank you so much. All right, with that, actually, I'm going to have to play my bumper at the end of this so that when someone watches on the replay, they'll be able to go from me talking about the first 2 episodes to talking about episode 3 and 4 and so on. So that's why I'm going to end up playing bumpers at the end of the video. Share audio. And with that, I will say good night. See you tomorrow.
Hey, 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 hey.